I'm not a filmmaker. I've always thought that being a filmmaker was super cool. I love movies, I love short films, I love documentaries, and I've always been really interested in getting into filmmaking, but I can't really call myself a filmmaker. Yeah, I guess you could say I'm a YouTuber, but mostly I'm a photographer. So when Sirui, I think that's how you say it, reached out to me to take a look at the new anamorphic lens, I almost said no. Not because I'm not interested, but mostly because I wasn't sure I could do this lens justice, seeing as that I'm not truly a filmmaker and I don't really have the experience to work with something like an anamorphic lens. But then I looked into it, and when I saw what this lens actually was, I got pretty excited and enthusiastically replied that I would love to check this lens out and do a little video about it. So this is Surei's new 40mm T1.8 Autofocus Anamorphic lens. I don't know a ton about gear and camera stuff in the filmmaking world, but as far as I know, this is the first autofocus anamorphic lens, which is pretty groundbreaking. The lens is also incredibly small for what an anamorphic lens should be. Most anamorphic setups are large and include diopters or attachments or adapters, and a ton of different lens elements that have to work together and be focused independent of each other. This lens is one small-ish lens that goes right onto your camera, has autofocus, a declicked aperture options if you want it. It has an autofocus lock, and it seems to be an incredibly easy way to get into anamorphic filmmaking. What I had learned about the lens was pretty impressive. I was interested in seeing what this lens could do, so I got my friend Matt to come with me to Chinatown so we could try some Wong Kar-wai-esque shots when it was raining here in Los Angeles, and I think we did a pretty good job. I will say right off the bat, this is not going to be a technical lens review because there are a ton of great videos out there that go over this lens and other lenses in this series that have a lot of information about the technical side of things, and I think they do a really great job, and me adding my technical analysis of this lens isn't going to add anything to the conversation, so I'm going to put a couple of videos in the description where you can check out videos by other creators that did a really great job. One of those videos was by Benj Heish. He did a really great breakdown of this lens and talked about all the technical specs. So go watch that video and come back here if you just want to see some very, very cinematic nighttime rain shots. off the bat, it kind of became really obvious to Matt and I that this lens is sort of a cheat code for cinematic footage. If you put this lens on your camera and point it at anything cool looking, it's going to look like a frame from a motion picture. It looks incredible. We shot some scenes in front of the world famous Fu Chao restaurant, known for its role in the blockbuster tour de force Rush Hour. Matt suggested that we shoot some stuff in slow motion, and I'm really glad that he did, because if the widescreen aspect ratio of an anamorphic lens wasn't enough to make something look cinematic, then slow motion rain in Chinatown Lights was definitely going to do it. The elephant in the room, the autofocus. Let's talk about that really quick. It is incredibly cool that this lens is autofocus capable, and it works seamlessly with my Fuji camera to provide that autofocus. And it's really, really awesome to have an autofocus anamorphic lens, obviously. Now, it's not going to be perfect, and I cannot attribute all of that imperfection to just the lens. I think that especially on my Fuji X-T4, the autofocus is pretty good, but it is going to struggle in lower light. It's going to struggle a little bit when there's a busy background, and there also is a little bit of dialing in that you have to do with the continuous autofocus settings to make sure you're getting the type of focus racking and speed and tracking that you really want. So it's going to take a little bit of experimentation. I think in the beginning, when we were trying to do a couple of shots of me walking towards the camera and Matt walking backwards, filming me, we had a couple of scenarios where the lens would snap to something really quickly after I moved out of frame, or the focus didn't really track me that well. But after doing some experimentation with the autofocus tracking settings, I think that the autofocus works a lot better. That being said, Sirui and Fujifilm do software updates, so I imagine in the future, if there's anything they can do to improve the autofocus for the camera and the lens, they will provide those updates. All that to say, autofocus works well. I'm really impressed. It's also very easy using peaking on the camera to manually focus, and the focus ring and the iris ring for the aperture are both geared to be used with follow focus. So they're very, very easy to use to drop into like a cinema rig kind of scenario. One thing I didn't like about the focus ring, and the only thing I didn't really like about this lens in general, is that there aren't hard stops at the end of the focus range on either direction. It continuously spins. I would have preferred hard stops, but there are ways to get around that if you are in a filmmaking scenario. So it's not like a deal breaker by any means. It's just something I kind of wish that it had. There's also a momentary autofocus lock switch on the lens itself, which I wasn't sure how I would use it in the first place, but it actually is very helpful if you are shooting something and you want to maintain focus in one section, but you don't want to turn autofocus off. You don't want to manually focus. You want to autofocus up to this point, and then you can hold that button down, and that button will ensure that it is locked in whatever it's focused on. Really cool, super useful. We used it a bunch of times while we were shooting. It's just a nice kind of feature that they added in there that I think is really useful, and probably people who are actual filmmakers and much more knowledgeable than me can figure out other cool ways to use that feature. There is not a ton more to say about this lens. I think Sirui really knocked this lens out of the park. The optical quality is excellent. The autofocus is fantastic. The little features really help and add a lot of functionality to this lens. The fact that they make Fuji X mount is really, really cool. And I'm kind of thinking I might want to get the 20 mil as well, because this one's the 40 mil. I have never used anamorphic lenses before, and I roundly wrote them off as being like kind of like a one-trick pony for a specific sort of filmmaking. After getting this lens and trying it out and then learning a little bit more about anamorphic lenses, I did some research and found out that a lot of my favorite films over the years have been shot on anamorphic lenses. Not every film that uses anamorphic lenses is going to blast you with those big blue anamorphic flares that you see so often in Michael Bay movies. And a lot of movies will use anamorphic lenses to a very subtle effect to get a very specific viewpoint or to get a very specific look without shining a hard light source. For those of you who've been following my channel for a little while, you know that I'm typically not one to do product reviews. I never want to be beholden to a company to talk about their product and say like, oh, it's really nice, even if I'm not going to use it. But I was really excited to work with Sirui to talk about their new autofocus anamorphic lens. It is really cool. I'm definitely going to be using it in the future for maybe some narrative stuff, definitely on this YouTube channel. And it's really cool to see a company making really rad products like this for filmmakers. Sirui was kind enough to give me a discount code for my viewers. The code is DEPT5, and when you click the link in the description, if you want to buy the lens, you put that code in, you get 5% off. So if you're interested in this lens, please click on that link. Please use my discount code to get a little bit of a discount on that lens. So thank you, Sirui, again for partnering with me on this video. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this was informative and interesting, and I had a lot of fun doing it. So thank you for being here to watch it, and I'll see you guys later.